What is up, everybody, and thanks for joining us on the Abundant Journey podcast. I'm your host, Nick James. We got a very special episode for you today, and it's special for a few reasons. First off, it is episode 50 for us. Thank you for hanging with us this year. We had a goal to hit 50 episodes by the end of 2023, and we made it. Here we are. And I got to tell you, we're just getting started. On top of it being a special episode because we're at number 50, we wanted to be sure to have a special guest for episode 50, and I really believe we've done just that. Our guest today is Dave Ederer, and Dave is perhaps one of my favorite people in the world and has been one of the most influential people in my journey. I met him a few years ago as a banker and quickly realized he's somebody that I had to get to know. Shortly after that, he encouraged me to go into commercial banking. And as you all know, I've been in commercial banking for a few years at this point. And he encouraged me to never stop learning. I've quoted him many times in his saying that investing in your education is worth 10 times what any salary can pay you. But beyond that, Dave literally embodies Abundant Journey. He started out as a CPA and was evaluating businesses to buy for his clients. So he learned some crazy skills. And then one day he looked up and said, "Why am I building wealth for other people?" Something that I've heard other guests say on the show here. And so what did he do? Well, of course, he bought a business. And from that point on, he has spent the last 4 decades buying, growing, and selling over 30 businesses. He's been involved in massive real estate deals and also served on the board of banks. He's had professional athlete CEOs reach out to him for business advice. But all of these accomplishments pale in comparison to the fact that he lives his life believing that he was created for a greater purpose than success, and that people are way more important than any dollar figure in someone's bank account. And I've seen him live it. Dave's acquired tremendous wealth, tremendous abundance, but he has a heart to give wisdom and encouragement to everybody he can. One of my favorite things is that he calls people when they find out that they have cancer and walks them through what to expect as he shares and encourages them and shares with them his own story and his own health battles. But enough about his backstory. What we did for this episode was take a long drive north and stick a microphone in front of Dave for over 2 hours and just talked. This episode is going to be a little bit different than our typical ones because we didn't flow through our normal progression with questions and we weren't constrained by time. It felt like really sitting with your grandfather who's done it all. And I found myself saying at the end of the episode, I found myself saying, hey, when I'm his age, which is over 80, by the way, I want to be like him and I want to have lived life just like he did. From a logistical standpoint, we had to do some decent editing because as we were talking over a couple hours, he had people come in and out of the room. And on top of that, he's a soft-spoken man. So I tried to put the mic as close as possible. I only share this with you because I believe the content here is worth any difficulty you may experience while listening, and I truly believe that there's something for everyone here in the episode. Whether it's business advice, wisdom on getting started, or simply a reminder to find wise people in your life and go sit with them and hear their stories and lessons. I encourage you to embrace what Dave has to share and spend some time reflecting on what Abundant Journey truly looks like. We hope you enjoy the episode. Take us back a few early years. I mean, because you started CPA, and we can go back as far as you want, but
that was I wrote it 2017.
Okay.
That's the published date.
Okay.
So it probably started in 2015 and finished in 2017. So it's fairly current, really. But the difficulty of it is, and the reason it's so private, Nick knows I was married when I was 22. Mm-hmm. And my wife died when I was 48, 49. And so I've got 2 complete life stories, really, because now I'm 80, almost 81. So I almost have 2 complete stories. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing, I did the math the other day. On March 22nd next year, Marcia will have been married. I'll have been married to Marcia longer than I was married to Janice, which is, I mean, that's one of those things that just makes me go,
Yeah.
because I'm still married to Janice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I love Marcia. But it's been very, very interesting to focus. So I am at that point where I am thinking back all the way. I mean, I've got pictures of where I grew up. I got pictures of our first house, which is about 1,200 square feet house. It's over $1 million now, the same house.
Wow.
The drapes that are in the windows are the same drapes my first wife, Marcia, made for the windows. I drive by it and I look at it, and it's exactly the same. The rhododendron I transplanted from the back to the front is still there.
Still there.
But the house has gone from $12,500 when we bought it, and now it's sold for about $1.1 million a year ago.
Wow.
And it's still 1,200 square feet, goes sideways through the kitchen type thing. But I go, you got to be kidding me. But so it's been fun to
This is so cool.
look through that a little bit.
Yeah.
And
I just saw a mention of Krista. You were on the board for Krista.
46 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
My summer jobs, all throughout my childhood, Island Lake.
Oh, really?
I was
yeah.
a big part of Island Lake and spent 5 or 6 full summers working there. Incredibly formative time of my own life. And
I was on the board when we bought. We always had Miracle Ranch before, but when we bought Island Lake, remember that transaction?
It's a very cool property.
It's a super property.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Well, both of them are, but that one with the lake and with the end. You drive through a residential area, and all of a sudden here's a camp that is on a lake. It's a very, very neat area. Yeah, Chris, I was going to go to 50, but I retired from the bank in May of there's kind of a big deal. COVID was there. There was 2020, and I retired from the bank in May, and at the May meeting of Krista, I decided I'd retire as well after 46 years, but 2 important ingredients in my life. I was there longer than any other board member, by far, actually. But it's just a great organization in many, many ways. Traveled, probably the most exciting story of Krista. There's my son. I'll tell him to come in. Probably the most exciting story. It's still one that's a little bit crazy. There were 4 of us, Well Concern, and the guy that headed up Well Concern, the guy that was president of Krista, a guy named Bruce Kennedy, who was the CEO of and founded Alaska Airlines, it was on the board. And I went to Bangladesh, and we went to Cambodia. And we're in Cambodia, and we dedicated a school, and we're down in the southeast part of Cambodia, quite a ways from the main city. And a guy comes to where we're staying, a little tiny village, and says to us, Pol Pot knows you're here, and you're getting too close to him, and you should leave immediately.
Wow.
The day before, we had been all through the killing fields.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
We decided we should leave immediately.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Pol Pot knows you're here, and he wants you to leave immediately.
That is crazy.
I mean, how many guys can say something? It's like,
we probably could count them on.
Oh, gosh, so we did leave.
Yeah.
Now, was that a part of the bank? when you were that trip, or no?
No, that's part of Krista.
Oh,
Yeah.
seriously, got it.
Krista had 11 divisions at that time, one of which was called World Concern. And one of the areas that we served was Bangladesh, Cambodia. So we were traveling with the area manager through that area, and visiting many things that we do there, and one of which was opening a school. Yeah, that was in a very, that's above and beyond duty, I think. But,
Sure.
it's the least story I've been able to carry for, gosh, it happened right after my wife died, because at that point in time I was willing to go anywhere and do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would have been 92, because I went to Mexico City, went to Cambodia, and I went to the poorest places in the world, visited the dumps of the world.
Yeah.
And because there's 6 or 7, I don't know how many now, but major dumps where 15 to 20,000 people live every day. So that was a couple-year journey in my life where I was just lost, but a very, very, very important part of 82 years.
Mm-hmm.
What was significant of that time for you?
Well, I was just lost. I mean, Janice and I met when we were in kindergarten, and we lived, therefore, in the same neighborhood. She was Catholic, so they didn't have kindergarten, and so she started first grade at another school.
Yeah.
We moved. Her family moved to the same area. We were only a block apart then. Her family had a swimming pool, so and 8 kids, good Catholic family.
Oh, yeah.
So they had a tennis court and swimming pool and all that stuff. So everyone would go, and they were on the very top of the hill in our area. So everybody would go to their house. It was kind of the deal.
Yeah.
And so we met and got married at age 22. 1 week after I graduated, 2 weeks after she graduated. She went all through the Catholic school system, and then I went through UW. But so we got married at 22. So I mean, it's the only ones. I mean, we really, and she invited me out. So I really had never even dated, other than when I was after. In fact, the first girl I called, or actually called and dated, was Marcia.
Okay.
First in my life.
Wow.
A friend. Our kids went to a school called the Villa. My wife started the auction there to raise money. She then had an assistant that she passed it to. And that assistant then had an assistant she passed it to, which was Marcia. So one of those deals. So she called me. The middle lady called me. She was the go-between, and said she had a girl for me to date. And I said, no. And then 9 months later, she called again, and it was in October, and I was in the desert. And so for whatever reason, I said, okay, got her number. And I said, if I don't call her right now, I'll never call her. So I did, first date. I called her, invited her out. So that was one of those deals where just the fact of calling a girl, and I mean, I wasn't good at all that stuff. And I told her that. I said, look, I don't know how to do all that stuff. I'm a great husband, but I'm a lousy date. I don't know how to do that stuff. And in fact, I told her that first night. So that was 96, 95. So, but that interim time, say from 92 to 95, I was just lost.
Yeah.
A friend of mine whose wife died, I went to see him and sat down he said, well, here's what I did. I went out to the end of the dock, sat at the end of the dock, turned around, walked up the dock, through the house, walked out the front door, and never went back. And he says, you're going to have to do something like that. He says, you got to go someplace where they don't know Janice, so they don't care about Janice. I mean, sit down with somebody in Bangladesh and tell them about Janice. They don't, what are you telling me? So go someplace where nobody knows it, you or anybody, your story, and start all over. So I went all over the place during that 2 years, kind of just following his instruction. It was Bruce Nordstrom was the guy, and he was a friend before, but he's been a very good friend during the time period. Good guy. Yeah. Why don't you ask some questions and I can go back, or how far you want to go back?
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I want to go back a little bit here on the business side. You and I know each other through business, through banking, and through looking at some deals together. But one of the things that struck me pretty early on for you was that you were in a good profession, CPA, and you had great clients. You understood numbers. You were helping them grow. And then there was kind of your light bulb moment of, why in the world am I doing this for everybody else?
Yep.
And I think a lot of our listeners have similar moments. They have these aha moments of, hey, why am I building wealth for other people?
Yep.
And that moment kind of shifted for you, and
Definitely.
then your story kind of picks up there. Maybe that's a good spot on the business side.
Yep.
So kind of walk us through what was going on, what was life like then for you, and what were some things that made you make the change?
Yeah, life was great at that point in a lot of ways. We had moved from one house to another house to another house, and we're enjoying what we're doing tremendously. All of the houses, 6 houses that I've lived in, including the one now, are within 2 miles of each other. I mean,
That's right.
Same zip code. Anyway, but I loved what I was doing. Pricewaterhouse was when I graduated from school, clearly that's where I wanted to go to work. It was of the 8 companies that were in that business at that time internationally. Pricewaterhouse had more New York Stock Exchange companies as clients than the other 7 combined.
Wow.
It was clearly the in my mind, the number one firm, and I absolutely wanted to go to work there, and did, and really enjoyed it. It was I learned more each year for the first 3 or 4 years than I learned in 4 years of college by far. I mean, when you can see yourself growing, you're really growing. I mean, other people come and, today's one of my grandson's birthdays. He's 12, and I can see him growing as a 12-year-old.
Sure.
That little spurt they get in there. He can't see himself growing. So when I say you're really growing, but the same thing is the learning deal. It's traditional that you have a book of business and you go back once a year to do that deal, and so how much you knew last year, and now here you walk in this year and you go, to the same business, and you just shake your head. I mean, I was so stupid last year. But it's so much easier. It's like listening to the pros talk about how the game slows down.
Yeah,
Game slows down. And it was that same sort of thing. So I really enjoyed what I did. It was great work. It was great people. I mean, we were all the same. The managing partner told me one time, took me to lunch and said, hey, there's no difference between you and me. Well, you're one of the newest guys here. We all came from the same place. We all have the same education. We're all the same, we all have the same intelligent base. I just been here 20 years and you've been here 2 months. I mean, that's the only difference.
Wow.
And that's the way he treated people, and that's the way we all treated each other. So it's a great place to work. I mean, the friends that you develop, they're the co-employee, became friends, helped each other, competing, yes, but in a very great way. So it was a great business. I got assigned to an area. That was the day of in the merger and acquisition world, where conglomerates was a magic word. Today, conglomerates is a bad word. Those businesses in those days all thought they were smarter than everybody else, and they had the management structure, so they could run any business. Didn't make any difference. And so we would have, companies in Pittsburgh, companies in New York, companies from whatever might be doing an acquisition, because internationally we're a big firm. And it might be in the Northwest, and they needed somebody to do due diligence. And every time somebody said there might be a job like that, my hand was up.
Sure.
So I did all that work. I absolutely loved it because it was pure business. I mean, yes, I was doing the numbers, and yes, I was doing the kinds of things that I had put together to supply them. But more, the question I constantly asked myself is, should they be buying this?
Yeah.
Is this a good deal? Is this a good deal? Basic, very, very basic question. And I got to be in on all the conversations that we're defining whether it is or isn't, and maybe it enhances a part of the business, maybe it isn't worth anything by itself, but maybe it adds to something, whatever. And so that I did that enough, and then started doing it. A lot of entrepreneurs were buying businesses same time, and that's when the aha moment for me was going to one more sale, and being with the buyers, and going to Canlis, and having a great dinner, and having a celebration, which we're going to have in December for our guys, and seeing how excited all these guys were, and I'm sitting there, finally said, why am I not doing this?
Yeah.
I'm getting $36,000 a year working for Pricewaterhouse, $3,000 a month, 3 times what I thought my goal in life was, and because when I graduated, I was at $500 a month, and thought that if I ever could make $1,000 a month, I'd be in.
Wow.
Yeah.
And but I just really wanted to go do it myself, and I'd learned so many different techniques on how to finance them, which was the key. That I created a scenario and created parameters, and which are the same ones I still establish for today if I was to be a buyer again, and started looking at companies. And the first one I've told you, Nick, was a client, and they had been a business that I had helped. They had been in special credits, and they asked me to come and help them. So I started in 1969, which was a very, very difficult year in Seattle business. That was the year with the last person leaving Seattle. Please turn out the lights. So we helped them through that, got them through that, and they had 2 businesses, and they decided to sell one. And asked me if I'd help them do that, and I did, prepared the company for sale. They said, do you have anybody you think might want to buy it? And I said, yes, me. And they said, okay, why don't you come tell us what you can do? And I did, and they sold it to me. So one of the people who will be at our party in December will be the son, who was a co-owner with his dad.
Wow.
His dad lived to be 104. So he'll be at the party. But anyway, bought it. I bought a gigantic company. Nick's heard this before. Big company. we had 4 guys on the day shift, 2 guys on the night shift, and a secretary. So we had 7 people. In the first year, we had a great year. They did $226,000 in sales. Not a month, not a day, for the whole year.
Wow.
So bought that company, and then went on to, that was 1974, September 1, and then bought one in 75, one in 76, one in 77, 2 in 78, one in 79. So I went on a little, one in 80, one in 181. That was the one that had $1.6 million cash. And my last one was in 82 of my little run that it was on. But it was, I loved doing it, absolutely loved doing it. I still miss the Price Waterhouse days, because there was a, when a team has a great team and a great season, Mariners a year ago, you end up loving each other and succeeding. Right. And being around a bunch of guys who were all the same, and I say guys because there's no girls, but it was a really special place to work. It was a great atmosphere. So I missed that by itself.
Yeah.
And then, but I loved being in business. I loved risk.
Yeah.
I've always been I'm looking at a boat over here that I drove 130 miles an hour.
Wow.
The hydroplanes.
Yeah.
Was that in the Tri-Cities as part of the?
Well, I was.
Big event,
that was the Tri-Cities, but after at the Tri-Cities they had the vintage boats come in, the slow-mos and the thriftways. And my hero as a kid was Bill Muncy, who drove the Miss Thriftway. And see, when I was a kid, we didn't have Mariners. We didn't have any of that stuff.
Sure.
But hydroplanes, in those days, the city was 350,000 people. The biggest sporting event in the world was Sunday at the hydroplanes.
Wow.
And we would have up to 500,000 people for the hydroplanes.
Oh my gosh.
It was gigantic. You would see kids like me with a hose walking up the street, going to the top of the hill, going to the house, turning the water on, putting it down in the gutter, and there'd be 5 or 6 of us racing hydroplanes down the bottom of the street, come back. We'd do that for hours. So, that was one of the risk things I did. They were there that Sunday, and then they were going up to Chelan, and Home Street had a boat. So I was in the pits with the guys and whatever, and the thriftway was there, and I was looking at it, and they said, well, we're going to go up to Chelan next week if you want to drive it. Yeah, maybe. So I went up, and you get to drive it, and they give you a certificate, and it's I did the 130-mile-an-hour club.
Wow.
So,
oh my gosh,
that's incredible.
Driving up and down Lake Chelan. It was great.
I've got so many questions, and I'm sure you have so many stories about those experiences. But I do want to ask, that's an interesting point that you made about your love for risk.
Yep.
And so I'd love for you to elaborate on that.
Yeah.
Where do you think that comes from, especially in light of the fact that most people, I think, live their life in a very risk-adverse way?
No question. Yeah. And you're taught to. I mean, we're what do attorneys exist for? Attorneys exist to reduce risk. They're not trying to complete a deal. They're trying to take the risk out of a deal. I'm not sure where it came from. My dad was absolutely risk adverse. That's him. He was not a risk taker at all in any way, amazingly so. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure where it came from. There were 2 events in my life, stupid events, but there are 2 events in my life that were influential to me, probably 3, but I'll mention 2. One, when I was at UW, and I played football for 8 years, and on each team that I played, I kicked. And so I'm sitting there watching football games because I'm a huge college football fan. And I'm watching the kicker, and it was Rick Redmond, good friend of mine. In fact, my UW ticket password is Redmond66, All-American, Hall of Fame, played 12 years in NFL. I had a good friend. But anyway, I'd watch him kick off. And I mean, he's there. Then you kicked off from the 40, and he's kicking the ball to the 20, And in high school, I kicked off, and I kicked the ball in the end zone from the 40. I watch him, and I just, My older brother helped with the team, and he got me a kicking opportunity with coach, and I didn't show up. I just couldn't do it. I was scared to death. Failure.
Yep.
Couldn't fail.
Yep.
So I didn't go. And stupid. Second one was in I used to weightlift all the time at the UW. And there's pictures in there that show that I actually had muscles. Anyway,
I believe it.
But I was very good at my weight level, and I set the UW records. And they had a big tournament for weightlifting. And the coach, who I work out all the time, and he was with me, but he was the coach for it. And so I went to the tournament, and I was in the back of the room, and it was my turn to lift, called my name, and I hid behind one of the football players. And I didn't go up. I snuck out the back and didn't do it. Those things were really important to me. And so I think the one other thing that was really important to me was my dad was a good old German, and his a constant sort of line was, if you're going to do it right. And that sounds really like something that's good, but with these two examples I gave, I think what it leads you to is, in fact, a guy, his name is Walker. He was a plant manager at our second company we bought, Merle Walker, little German guy. And he says, well, Dave, he says, what happens if you live to that, if you're going to do it right? He says, let me give you an experience. He says, I live next door to an Italian guy. And every year he paints 1/4 of his house. He says, I could never do that. But his house always looks better than mine. Because when I'm going to do it, I have to do it right. And guess what? I don't do it.
It never gets done.
Doesn't get done. And I thought, that's pretty important stuff. When I decided to buy the company, I went home and told my dad what I was going to do. Oh, his oldest son was an attorney, second son was CPA, his third son was in the insurance business, and that's a very professional business. And I told him, I said, Dad, I'd rather try and fail than not try at all. Huge. Blasphemy. Absolute blasphemy. And that really is where I got to. I'd rather try. I'd missed on the football deal. I'd missed on the weightlifting deal. And I gotta go try. So we bought 34 companies.
Wow.
And during the period of time.
You did more than try.
Yeah, we just kept. I really got into a habit. I was addicted, I think, but I loved doing it, and it was at a time when you could do those in a wonderful way, and banks were willing to give me money to do them, and So off we went. And but that risk thing is, I jumped out of an airplane and I drove the hydroplane and I did a triathlon and I climbed Mount Rainier, all that stuff in about 4-year period.
Wow.
Just to do that because it satisfied that need to take a risk. And then what I did, interestingly enough, I sold our 2 biggest businesses, probably represented 70% of our sales and probably represented 70% of our employees. We probably had 1,500 employees at that time. And I had 12 businesses at that time. And but these 2 were the dominant ones. So my balance sheet changed. My balance sheet was beautiful. Banks loved my balance sheet. And I looked at the balance sheet and everything was up in the upper left-hand corner. Stocks, cash. That was 90% of my balance sheet. And I couldn't stand it. I mean, it was, how do you go and talk about your cash? I can talk about heat treating. I can talk about manufacturing door latch assemblies for the 767, 237 parts in every one of them. We made every part and assembled them for every 767 built. Well, that was cool stuff. I love that stuff. But you can't talk about your cash.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I finally told my wife, I said, this is really boring. I mean, really boring. So I started again and bought several more. But I really liked the hunt of doing that stuff. My wife, Marcia, has no question. She knows that I love the risk of it all. We almost buried ourselves in 2020 because we invested in the hipping business, which was a major investment and a major risk. We opened the doors. We had a nice party and invited our customers on the 15th of March in 2020. And the 3 major customers, all within 2 miles of the shop, all came, and they mothballed their plants that day, COVID, and we opened our doors that day.
Wow.
So here we had a $35 million asset and no sales. And I mean, no sales.
Yeah.
Not a little bit of sales, no
Nothing.
sales. And we really went 2 years before we had any meaningful sales. We didn't have a break-even month until probably March of this year,
Wow.
but it went up dramatically as all the kinds of things we make, Boeing aircraft pieces, whatever, started to go through that facility. There's only 5 facilities like this in the U.S.,
Okay.
so it's an unusual thing. But the fun part of that is our CEO, who came with this idea, sat down with Dan and I, and said, "You are 76 years old. Is this really something you want to do?" And my son looked at him and said, "You don't know my dad." And because we were just fine at that time.
Yeah.
I said, "No, we're willing to." I said, "We're going to do it." But it was we struggled mightily in 20 and 21, and but the strategy ended up working. Good luck rather than any meaningful thinking, but and that's the business that we just sold, and had a nice run on that.
Oh, yeah. Well, and one thing that I know as we've talked your story, a lot of times you love the game and
Yes.
you love business and
Yeah.
evaluating the risk. You weren't one of those folks who jumped in with the intention to sell. You
No.
You ultimately said, hey, like seems interesting, this seems exciting, and I want to dedicate time and energy and learn and give it what I can. And then inevitably you were rewarded because people came by and said, hey, we're going to buy this 3, 4, 5 times what you, or maybe even more than what you bought it for and have grown it to. And so, talk a little bit about that and just your experience, because I think a lot of people are out there trying to find a quick buck.
Flip, yeah.
Trying to flip.
Yeah, we would, I decided very, very early that I was going to buy good companies and I was going to keep them. And we were going to run them every single day as if we were going to have them forever. That had to be the way we'd think about it. And so every one of them, in fact, there's several that I still wish we had that were really great companies. But we did sell some, so why did we sell some if we bought them to keep them? I was probably 10 years into the deal, I would guess, 10 years into the deal, when I came out with a new parameter. We evaluated the company every year, and we evaluated, we did my evaluation, and each of the companies had a scorecard, and the scorecard was simply a report card, and it was really, really that simple, because there are only 5 things that a company exists for, and so you got to look at those 5 things, and those 5 things are clearly I put employees first. I've never had a customer bring me an employee, but I've had a lot of employees who bring me customers. So in fact, I have a list there of things that say customers are number 1, and I say, yeah, that's fine, but not with me. Employees are number 1.
Yep.
Customers are number 2. Your supply base is number 3. The community in which you live is number 4. And the owners are number 5. And so we got to sit down. This is our short-term, long-term planning. Management team grades it. Are we A's? Are we B's? Are we C's? What is the goal? To be straight A's, of course. If we're not, then where aren't we? And if we're a C, what will an A look like? And so what's the plan? What's the date? Who's going to do what when? To get to an A. That's my gig, guys.
Yep.
That's my gig.
The golden secret sauce.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And so what does that mean? I finally got serious about the 5th issue, the owners. Who should be the owner of this business? Should it be me? Is there somebody who can own this company and it'll be better for the employees, better for the customers, better for the suppliers, and better for the community? If there is, then you better sell. Okay. So, because if that's what you believe, then and that's, in fact, that's the ingredient that chose our buyer this time. We've got 5 facilities. He's got now 161 facilities.
Wow.
He is the dominant person. In fact, I said 30 years ago, the CEO flew out. We rented a plane and went around to each of the facilities. And at night, I had a key, so we'd get in and he could turn the lights on. And so he got to see stuff because people knew him, and because he was a CEO of the biggest company in the world for what we do.
Sure.
And so we snuck around. And I told him that. I said, if we ever sell, it will be to you. And I walked him through my thinking. And So we had two suitors, but one of the suitors was a PE firm, and how many times have you seen a PE firm do what it does? Most of the time. And even if it doesn't go bad, if it goes good, they're only going to own it for 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the website of the company that wanted to buy us, that's what it says. They turn them in 3 years. A friend of mine sold to them now 3.5 years ago. And I called him in January, and he had just left the company. He had a 3-year agreement. He says, well, they did exactly what PE firms do. They bought me. I was the roll-up model. They bought 32 more of me's.
Wow.
And blew it out and made 8 times the money.
Wow.
When they do their 5, there aren't 5.
Mm.
There's only one.
Yeah.
And that's this one.
Ownership.
That's all they're in business for. They really are.
They're the
And they do
conglomerate
very
in the
well.
negative sense,
Yeah.
right?
We had one PE firm that we sat with, that we joined with to buy another company that didn't work a year ago now. And they said that their goal is to make 30 to 35% a year for their shareholders.
Wow.
And they've been doing that for years. Well, that's great. That's way better than I've done. Way better than I've done. But I can't do it that way. I mean, that's just me. I can't do it that way.
Yeah, you have to ask at what cost, right? To give that kind of return.
Yep. So when it got down to the end, we had our team together, and we were picking between the two, and the PE firm, of course, was higher. And I said, I like to reduce things to a really simple, that's my whole business,
I love that.
is to reduce it to a really simple thing. So we're trying to evaluate the two businesses. And my 2 MBA son and CEO are just talking macro and all this stuff. And I let them go on. And finally I said, let's just answer this question. If we sell this business to this guy, or if we sell this business to this guy, who's going to own the business in 5 years?
Yeah.
Who's going to take care of our customers? Who's going to take care of our employees? Well, obviously this guy, because this guy will sell us. Who's he going to sell it to? We don't know. So we're selling our business. We're renting our business.
Yeah.
We're just going to rent it and then sell it to somebody that we don't know. In fact, we won't own it, so we don't get to choose who's going to own it.
Yeah.
Business started in 1946, and we're just going to roll it up. And so that was my question, really simple. Who's going to own the business in 5 years?
Yeah.
I said, I want this company to own it, because they'll own it. They started in the early 1900s.
Wow.
They're 120 years old. So we know they're going to own it 5 years from now. They're going to own it 20 years from now.
Yeah.
And they're going to take care of our people. So that really was the
That was the deciding factor.
that was a deciding factor.
Well,
Yeah.
and I love that you're speaking to the fact that business is stewardship, and it's not
Yep.
it's not the owner, the big guy on top, trying to get as much of what he can
Right.
out of everybody else, but flipping the entire business model upside down and saying it's employees, it's
Yep.
customers, it's relationships, and then ownership last. You know, one of the things I think why we get along so well is as you've lived that, and to your point, you recently just sold one of these companies and you left money on the table, but it was in a recognition that there are things that are more important than money.
Yep. Yep.
You've owned 35 businesses. You've been in this game for over 50 years. Being where you are today, what are some other things that are more important than money that you've learned along
yeah.
the journey?
Yeah, no, I like this. One of the reasons I haven't retired is because I'm better at business than I'm at golf. And which is true, definitely true. Not so much that I'm good at business, but it is that I'm not very good at golf. I'm getting close to 100 now. 95s, 96s, man, that's hard for me to take. But that's when you're 80, you don't hit the ball very far. Particularly when you have zero testosterone. A whole nother subject. This will sound, business is very serious to me, but business is clearly a game to me. Mm-hmm. I do take business serious because you're talking about people, and you're talking about families, and you're talking about all that sort of thing. So it is serious, but there's an element to it as well, which I think a lot of successful business guys understand, and that there's clearly a game to it. And there's just a lot of people who don't understand the game. It's surprising, and your kids are going to understand the game. Selling lemonade. In fact, just to mention this, I was a little this summer, one of those little neighborhood festivals, a couple hundred people kind of thing. And outside of it was two little kids with a stand. And so I stopped by and I gave them $20, and I went inside the deal. And about 10 minutes went by, and this little kid comes up to me. It's one of the kids at the stand. And he said, "You dropped $10. And he wanted to find me and give me that $10.
Wow.
Well, it wasn't my $10 because I knew I didn't have a 10. I only have 20, so I can show you. And I knew it wasn't mine. And I didn't tell him I didn't know it was mine. But I said, I really appreciate it, and took it. And then said, well, there's one more thing. I said, I want you to have this $10, and gave it back to him. But I thought, that the character of what he had just done, I found so admirable. Just to me, it just golly, because he had to search me out amongst 100 people and finally find me to do that. So what does that have to do with your question? It is a serious business. Is serious. You got to take it serious. You got to love it. At the same time, it is a game, and you've got to play it, and you really do. Again, it's sort of like the pros, who are probably athletically better when they're 23 than when they're 26, but they're better players at 26 than we're at 23. Because they know how to take shortcuts. They know how to get to the ball, and so you do need to learn the game of that's being played. So I think those two things are really important. But my business, the element of we've only been talking about business, so you might think my priorities are business is number one. No, they're not. It isn't. It isn't that. In fact, the book I saw the other day mentions it. It's got to fit in to a greater picture, and for me, the greater picture is I have a simple evaluation system for myself. I have one simple for the business, which I described, but I have one for myself, and that's the letter F, and I write about it in there. But because the letter F, which is a great letter, if you define the letter with faith as an F, and family as an F, and friends as an F, and fun as an F. I've got 2 more. Finance is a 5th. There's 1 more. Can't remember. But so finance is only one of the 6. So yes, we've talked 100% so far about business, but 100% of my life is not business.
Yep.
One of the reasons I left Price Waterhouse, I was one. In fact, my number 2 grandson, I had lunch with last week, and he was talking about he had a CPA job with a CPA firm that's a killer firm, and he ended up leaving. He's a little more woke, but he says his firm, all they did was work. I mean, they really worked. That's all they did, and they was very competitive, and it was clearly an up or out deal, and that was just too much for him, so he left. And the job he's got is great, but I told him, I said, Arthur, let me describe my first 5 years at Price Waterhouse. And this way I describe it. You guys are going to get the feeling of how I do things. I said, Arthur, I knew when it was time to go home because the sun was coming up. And so I'd go home to shave, shower, shit, and shine my shoes.
Wow.
And then I'd go back to work. And he looked at me. And I said, yes, that's what I did. That's what I did. And then when I started, so I didn't have kids for the first 5 years.
Yeah.
My wife's a teacher. Then we had a boy. Then we had a girl. Just exactly the plan. We were going to get married when we were 22. We were going to each work for 5 years. Then we were going to have a boy, and then 2 years later we were going to have a girl. Of course, it's really simple, right? That's what we did. And so then it was, because I'm a focus guy, and then it was, all right, now we have more than 1 F. So we're going to go to the other ones. And one of the main reasons I left is because I was working truly. I had 16 weeks of vacation accumulated when I quit.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea they were accumulating vacation, but it surprised me. It was a big check. It was nice to get, but I would get more chargeable hours than anybody in the firm. I just had to be that. I always had the attitude. The guys were all smarter than me, but the smart guys might work 10 hours, and they'd get 10 effective hours. If I was going to get 11 effective hours and beat them, then I'd probably have to work 14 hours. And that was my attitude. And so I'd work 14 hours. That's all there was to it. Because I would outwork anybody. That was just, I can't outsmart anybody, but I can outwork them. So I did. But then once we had children and we had made the decision that family clearly was the issue. And so I said, look, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to be home for dinner every single night at 6 o'clock. I may go to work at 5 in the morning, so I may miss breakfast, but I'm going to be home at 6 o'clock for dinner every night. And that's what I did.
Wow.
And I did coach basketball, 8 teams. I did coach football for 5 years, loved every single day of it. I did all that stuff with the kids and loved doing it. But that's because my Fs got rearranged.
Yeah.
And the faith part of it, we were always, and I say we because Janice and I just grew up together. I mean, we really did raise each other. We were together all the time, and really did raise each other. So it's really easy to say we. But she was Catholic and I was Episcopalian. So so I went to St. Stephen. She went to Assumption. And so to get married, of course, I had to do it in the Catholic Church, and I had to be a Catholic to do that. So I bargained with the priest about what things were in and what weren't in. Because you had to promise all this stuff, and I couldn't promise all that stuff. I couldn't promise that my kids would be raised Catholic. I couldn't, there's some of those things so we bargained. I had to negotiate, right?
Sure.
And so he did, and so he let me in. So then we went to the Catholic Church for several years, and it just didn't. In fact, we would go to church. People can't believe this. I haven't even really talked about it with my kids, but on dates we were only allowed to date one night a week, so either Friday or Saturday. That was it. But we would oftentimes go to church before our date. That was not unusual to us. And when I proposed, it was church was dark. It was 8 o'clock at night, whatever. And that's when I proposed. So we were that was important to us, but it was church that was important to us. And so we wanted something. Something told us that we wanted more. So we then started to go to the Episcopal Church, which is very great. I remember a guy saying one time, he says, "I'm just so proud to be be rich enough to be an Episcopalian." It didn't sell real well with me.
Yeah, right.
And he was President Frederick Nelson, and that didn't settle. That wasn't the reason we decided to go look around, but one of our jobs at Pricewaterhouse was in Salt Lake, so we went to the temple and came back and started going to the Mormon church for a year, and then crazy thing happened, faith-wise, crazy, God's deal. I was asked to give a talk at Seattle Pacific University by a guy. I was the guy running for office in the state of Washington, good friend. And he hired a full-time student to man the office and do all that paperwork. So, and I was the treasurer. So, got to know this kid, and he was at SBU, and then he stayed on at SBU while I was in law school as an advisor. One of his jobs was to have speakers come in and speak to a group of kids. So he asked me if I would do that, and I said yes. It was the night of an SBU. SBU is a huge soccer school, and Seattle U were playing the game that night. So we show up. He shows up, I show up. That's it.
Wow.
Nobody, he was expecting about 100. We had zero. We had nobody show up. And so he felt that he needed to spend time with me. Since I had to, so we did. We talked like we're talking now for about a half hour. And he invited me to come to the church, the school's church right across the street. So we did. And we fell in love with that guy, the Sunday school teacher who had been the pastor, who had been the president of the school. He'd been president of 2 of the schools, the universities, and just a great guy, 80-some-year-old guy, full of wisdom, Winston Churchill-looking guy, just exactly like Winston Churchill. And huge. He would start class by reading Mickey Rooney. Just something really funny, but he was a very basic. Even though he had a real PhD, not a funny one. He really did teach at an amazing level, and all of us were the same age, and having kids and doing all that stuff. And so there's through that we actually ended up creating and becoming what would be called a Christian, having a personal relationship, which really, and that would my wife, as always, the wives go first. What's that been about husbands being leaders?
Yeah.
Almost everybody I know as a wife was a leader.
Yeah.
And so that that started that, and that would have been, in fact, it was the summer that we had Dan. He was born in February, and he was at the church retreat up at Bourne Beach, campfire setting, whatever. And our teacher spoke, and that's when I finally got through to the old guy. And it's been a very, very dominant part of my life since. And more so now. I mean, it's more so every day, particularly the Israel thing. I mean, I find myself stopping. I came down an hour early and just prayed. It's become a much bigger part of my life. It's been a major part of my life for 40 years, but we have a Bible study on Tuesday that I run, and a Bible study on Thursday I attend, and it's fantastic. Just great guys, and so I've kind of overwhelmed myself with that, just being there kind of a thing. That's been a very important part of our, and it's part of our business. Everybody knows it. We have dinners and we have celebrations and whatever, lunches. I will not pray before any of those events unless I'm asked to. But if you ask me, I will. So they know that, so they always ask me. But because they know they better. But I've never told them they better. But it is a part of our. We don't hire for that. We don't push that. We don't do any of that. But they know that that's really important to me, and they're respectful of it, which I appreciate. And in fact, last Monday, I went down to say goodbye to a bunch of these guys, and 3 of the guys said, "You don't know, but you saved my life." Saved my life. God, that's pretty powerful stuff,
Right.
And so it was a very emotional day, and wonderful day. And the old guys, 27 years, 32 years, to listen to these guys and how long they've worked there and what it's meant to them and whatever. It's been, and they're all my buddies. Because they really are. They're just my buddies. And I do something that's kind of stupid. But in fact, the other day I got an email from one of them, a picture of a tank going by in Ukraine. And it shows a guy walking up to stopping the tank and handing a box of Snickers to the guys. And I'm the Snickers guy. And so I go around, and I did it Monday again, every time I've done it, that I go. And so I walk around and see every single guy and give them a Snickers.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, just say thank you and how you doing and whatever. It's the best part of what I do. It's the first thing I walk in the door, say hello, and then I'm gone, go in the shop, and spend an hour doing that. But it's just part of individualizing the whole deal, one-on-one, and knowing what's going on and being able to. That's, to me, is by far the best part of business. The friends that I've made. And they're friends for life. I mean, these are my best friend who died a couple years ago. He and I bought a company together in the packaging business. Right after that, there was a boat business for sale, and I knew the general manager and told me how to. In fact, I told him. He was one of my guys that I did that Stack had done business with. And then when I was thinking of buying Stack, I went around and talked to 68 customers, and he was one of them. So we became friends. And I had lunch with him one day, and I said, "You guys own this business, right?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what are you going to do when they come to you and tell you they're going to sell it?" He looked at me. He said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Are you ready for that day? Because it's going to happen." He said, "Well, no. I make $65,000 a year." "What do you mean? Am I ready?" I said, "Well, are you going to buy it?" "I can't buy this." "Yes, you can. You can buy it." So we did. And now he's my best friend after my other friend. And he's been he was my second best friend. And then when the other guy died, he moved in the number one spot. But a man of very, very strong faith, wonderful guy. Actually, owning the company in the bolt business, he actually went to divinity school for 3 years in Portland and completed that study. But just a great, great guy.
Yeah.
But yes, we were partners, and yes, we had fun. We still are partners. And but it's the friendship that overwhelms all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And clearly is the end of the deal. How many friends do I have? How much money do I have? I don't really care. I really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly now. Do I need a new car? No. My 2005 car has 140,000 miles on it, and it's a great car. So I don't need a new car. I don't need a new house. I don't need a new boat. My 1993 Cobalt is in perfect shape. I don't need it. So I really don't care. I really don't. Because I'm stage 4 cancer guy. At age 80, I looked at the numbers, and 24% of the people who reach 80 reach 90. So, 3 out of 5, or 3 out of 4 don't make it. And those people aren't sick. So I really look at it differently, and it makes it really easy to not care about the money. It really does.
Yeah.
Because I don't have things that I need to do, and so it really. But do I care about the friends that I've accumulated? Absolutely. Will I spend a lot of time with friends over the next few years, whatever it is? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my Bible study friends, great guys. One of them's the one I run is at Thunderbird in Palm Springs. We play golf together. But the guys now are saying, we've been doing it 30 years, say, the best hour of the week isn't when I'm playing golf. It's Tuesday morning when we're studying. And we're still in Luke. We laughed the other day. We've been in Luke for a year. We're in the 14th chapter. We can't even get through a chapter. We can only get through about 3 paragraphs in our Thursday morning group. We're going to be in Luke for the rest of our lives. And but yeah, we probably have 20 guys, and probably 12 to 14 show up every Thursday morning. And it is so meaningful.
Well, I got a couple more questions for you,
okay.
And we can wrap it up here. But what I've known is that you've been successful as long as you have, and you've talked a little bit about it here in the last few minutes, just about the friendship and the people. But the question, and I'll add some color, but the question is, why do you keep going? And maybe I don't need to add color, but I want to give context for our listeners too, in that you've taken on the mentor role for a lot of people in the last few years. You're still running multiple companies, and you have multiple grandkids and
Yep.
children that you are
Yep.
investing your time in. So, knowing the success that you've had,
Yeah.
I think to step back and say, why? I mean, at 80,
Yep.
why are you
Okay.
still here in the office? And we've talked a little bit about it today, but I just want to drive that point home.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, I'm better at business than I'm golf. And it's more rewarding, far more reward. I love the guys I play golf with. It's a great bunch. And we have a good time. And we're all getting lousy. I mean, we're all in the other day, too. In fact, we have a new par now. Two of the guys that I play golf with now, a par is 100. So when we had lunch last Thursday morning, one of them was 3 over par, and one of them was 5 over par, and I was 3 under par. So, that's the way we talk now.
Yeah.
I love it.
I mean, gee, Merry Christmas, a whole different deal. But I really love what I do. I mean, I loved having lunch with this guy yesterday and seeing the impact that it's had on his life and being with him and the friendship that we have. I told him I'm going to buy him a book because he just sold his business and I haven't done it yet. And I'm going to, and it's Halftime, which is Buford's book. Because I want him to think about halftime.
Mm.
What is the, are you trying to be successful or are you trying to be significant is the basic question of Buford. When he wrote that book, I read it and I loved it, and I called him and I said, "Can I come and visit you?"
Mm.
He said, "Yeah." And I said, so I flew to Dallas. He had a room in the airport, and we sat and talked for 4 hours, had lunch, got back on the plane, flew home.
Wow.
It was fabulous. But that's a book I want to give him. Because I think that kind of is a driver. In other words, success and significance, and you can do it together. There's no reason. The whole concept of full-time ministry is my friend in the bolt business said it beautifully when somebody asked him for money. He says, I want to leave my job and go into full-time ministry, and would you support me? And very bluntly, this guy's very blunt, said, well, why? I'm in full-time ministry and you're not supporting me. Why should I support? You can do both.
Mm-hmm.
Great line, because I'd been a personal let. I was an easy pitch all the time before that, and finally realized that's a really great challenge for a person to hear that. There's a lot of us that are in full-time ministry,
Mm-hmm.
and we figure out how to provide. But my life was very, it's really been soon. Remember, it was only the 6th of October that we closed that deal. So that's 2 weeks ago Friday. So what am I going to end up doing? I'm not sure. But I really think it'll be more of the time, like getting together, more of the time of, I'm hoping my oldest grandson, who's coming back, see, I've got 10 grandkids, and none of them are business guys yet, and I'm not pushing them, but I'd sure love it. If one wanted to do it, I would love it if my 30-year-old would come back. He's getting really disenchanted with what he's doing, and he's a special forces Marine, and a really serious guy about it. That's all he ever wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's an officer, and now he's a Marine. He does exactly what his leaders tell him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he really is having difficulty teaching what they're told to teach now.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Real conflict for him. And if you hear the military is struggling with. That's the reason it's struggling.
Right.
These guys just,
Yep.
Come on. I have to tell you, it's okay if you want to change male to female, and yes, we'll pay for it, and we'll provide it. We'll get you. It's Christmas. It's just so difficult for those guys to be going in there to do what they're going to do, and then that's what they're spending a great deal of time on. So he's coming home in November, and I continue to hear him say some things. So what does that mean? I found a business for him this weekend. He doesn't know it, but I did. And found a nice business for him. And I'd love it if he would want to come home and run it, own it and run it. Mm-hmm. And so we'll see what happens. But we've established scholarship deal for the kids. I'm very unhappy with that. Very unhappy with that. I don't want any university that I know receiving that hard-earned money to teach my kids what they're going to teach them. So what I have said, because it was developed based on education, that it's education or an entrepreneurial pursuit.
Yep.
In other words, if you want to take this money and not go to college, but you want to start a business or do something, that's your decision. Mm-hmm. I'd love to help some of them do that, and we'll see what happens. But we have one in college, 2 out, and then we have 2 more coming along, 16 and 14. But that's looking a long ways out. I'd be in the 90s, so somehow we're skirted through the labyrinth. I'd love to do that, and I love helping Dan. He doesn't really need help anymore. He's a serious business guy. He's been hearing this stuff that you're hearing since he was 10. When he was in high school, there was what was called an economic check register. You guys never heard of an economic check register, have you?
I think I've heard of it.
It's a binder that you can open like this, and you can have all your accounts along here, payroll expense, taxes, rent, and then on this side is the checkbook. And when you write a check, you have to distribute it over here and you have to add it at the end of each. Yeah. He was doing that for each of our buildings when he was in high school.
Wow.
He had to write the checks. He had to make sure the rent got paid.
That's awesome.
And then he had to record it all and produce what was, of course, a financial statement. Add up all the rent, add up all the whatever. Great experience for him.
Totally.
But he's been doing that now for 30 years, so he's a serious guy. And he knows way more about real estate than I do. Way, way, way more. So I'm not going to spend time with him doing that stuff, but
sure.
It's fun to do it with this young guy who's in our office, and it's just fun. Bradley, I love spending time with Bradley and talking to him about what he's doing, and so I'll maintain my business side all the way along, no question. And these 2 guys both died while doing business. This guy retired at 60. This guy died, so he retired real early.
Yeah.
My dad was not interested in business, not at all. But I will. The word retire, people have used that lately, and that's almost an offensive word for me. I don't know if I'm afraid of it. But it sounds very unenticing to me. I just don't. I'm going to be busy doing stuff, getting up every day, being excited about getting up every day. I'll have my to-do list. I'll do things, and then one day I won't.
Yeah.
And I like that idea. So I'll keep doing. and you always hear things, and then you can kind of be a street light, go where sometimes it's red, sometimes it's green, and you can kind of help people. It's like listening to this guy who wants to sell his business, called me. And I thought, gosh, that sounds like a great business for my grandson. Perfect size. That I'll still stay in the middle of that stuff and enjoy it. And
Absolutely.
all I'm going to do with the money is put it in treasuries, non-taxable treasuries. I don't want to give Biden any money. So that's what I'll...
Yeah.
So I'm not going to, I've always invested stock market and that sort of thing. In fact, I used to, when I was in junior high school, call my broker at lunchtime to find out how my stocks were doing. And I'd buy 3 shares of this. And he was a neighbor. And the guy, Gordy Zweibel, he was a stockbroker, and he was a very successful stockbroker. But the doggone guy would take my calls. He would teach me stuff. I'd go to his house, and he would talk about things. I may have had $500 invested, and he would take the time and do that stuff. I loved it, but I'm not gonna screw around with it. I'm not interested in the stock market or anything, so I won't worry about that stuff. That side. I'll just spend time one-on-one with people.
I love that.
Probably the most. And
well, we love the time you've been spending with us, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nick, do you got any questions too, or
talk too much, but
any to say before we wrap it?
I mean, yeah, there's so much richness here. I think one of the questions that we consistently ask of everybody that we interview is, at the end of your life, what do you hope that you'll be remembered for?
Yeah.
And a lot of our
question.
guests, that's a pretty theoretical kind of question, because they're much earlier in their business career, and they just don't have the perspective or experience and everything that you have. And so I know you've touched on a lot of motivations behind business, so much in there that's so valuable as far as the priority of people. But I am curious, just what comes to mind for you as you think about how you want to be remembered, the legacy that you're leaving behind.
Yeah. When Peterson came to coach the Huskies, he was an OKG guy. That was his term, our kind of guy. And I think we know what that means. And I want to be remembered as being an OKG. And the other word I use is often is, in fact, I just wrote it to a guy about his dad who died. And I said, he was a really good guy. And we all know what good guys are. And I would hope people would say that. And to me, all those definitions are related. A man of faith. Because I'm quiet about my faith, but people are aware of it, and I don't sell it. I believe in the if you have to talk about it, but if you're doing stuff you don't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you live it.
Yeah. And so that's important to me. To be a man of considered to have been a man of faith is very important to me. As an example, my partner, who's the real strong Christian, on his 50th birthday, and he's a car guy, crazy car guy, and he would, when we were in business together, I mean, every year he's getting a new car. And his wife stopped him on his 60th birthday, and because he got a new R8 Audi, that new really cool car. He always has really cool cars. And she came home, and she greeted him at the door with, "What is it with you?" On his birthday. "What is it with you?" he was all excited about his car. He says, you know what they're going to talk about at your funeral? That you had really nice cars. I mean, he called me. And I said, what are you going to do? He says, I'm in my car now. I'm taking it back.
Wow.
And she just floored him. She just absolutely nailed him. Is that what you're going to have at your funeral? I said, you really like cars? He really drove cool cars. And he's was a person of faith before that, no question. His father was a pastor, grew up as a church kid, and a PK. But it really startled him into living a day-to-day life that just, I've really, you've heard me reduce things down all the way along. And so what is my mission? What is my, all these people say, well, you should have business goals. You sit down and you carefully do all that stuff. And just this year, I've refined my whole faith to the following. I want to do God's will for God's glory. That's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. That's all I want to do. And so that's my prayer in the morning, my prayer at night, and I say it to myself several times a day. What are you doing? Are you doing God's will? And are you doing for God's glory? And that's what I would like to know about myself when I die. So I'm more concerned about that and what other people may think. But I think if I do that, hopefully then others will see that, and for whatever that means to them. But that really is how simple it is where I am, and I'm really pleased that it. I love to say the Lord's Prayer. I do it one word at a time, and I do this regularly. And every time I do it, and then I'll just say, even the word hour, it's not it isn't mine, it's our. What does that mean? Our. What does God want saying our for? Because He wants you to be in communion with people, whatever. And you can sit and take a word like our, and then we always say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy will be done. And you go into this thing that just is so obvious, but I started to say, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. No, thy will be done on earth. You don't stop it, thy will be done. No, that isn't it. He wants you to do it on earth. That was one of my, that was about 2 months ago. And that's thy will. And that's what I started thinking, thy will on earth. This isn't something we're saving to do for eternity. This is something that He wants us to do it on earth. He would like, His plan, His goal is to, for us, even though He gave us free will, He wants us to pray to do that on earth, as well as in heaven, but on earth. It really struck me. And that's after I've said it 1,000 times that I kind of connect that way. And so that then led me to think, thy will. That's kind of probably a summary of it.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, I think that in so many ways you've modeled that very well with your life, with the priorities that you've kept, with the mindset that you've brought toward business acquisition, running businesses, and even, like the story that you shared about selling a business and thinking more long-term, thinking in line with, okay, what would God's will on earth look like in in business and relationships and family. And so it's really inspiring to hear what you've done, and I'm really grateful for you sharing with us for the time here.
Glad. One more story I'll tell. It's
Yeah.
very, very short. Our association, Metal Traders Institute, they asked me to, I've never spoken to it, and they asked me to, he said, we really would like to have you on our program. And so because everybody knows that Stack has a name for being successful and a reputation, all that. And so he wanted me to describe what it was that was the reason for our success. And I said, I would be happy to talk, but that isn't the subject that that your members are going to want to hear. And because the message was that, what are we doing business-wise to be successful? And I said, they really aren't going to want to hear, because it's really simple. We share our profits every month. And these guys aren't going to want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to give away probably part of their profits to their employees. They don't want to hear that. And I said, I don't want to give that talk. So I never have given a talk. But I think that's one of the fun parts of the deal. My father said to me, and I've told Nick this before, when he got through business and he retired, he and I were fishing in his little 14-foot boat aluminum boat up on the Straits of Juan de Fuca. Not real good water to be in a 14-foot boat on. Anyway, when he retired, they gave him a brand new Suburban, and he had never had a new car. He drove that car for about 2 months. He couldn't drive a brand new Suburban, so he sold it. he just couldn't do it. But we were sitting fishing one day, and I asked him, I said, Dad, you're not in business anymore. And he was never a things guy. I mean, never a things guy. I said, what do you think about? What do you think about all your years you're down at Ederer Corporation? He says, well, I think about all the kids I had, think about all the kids we raised, how many kids went to college, how many houses we bought. Dad, what are you talking about? How many cars we bought. He says, well, my employees. That was it. That was his memory. His what he had provided these guys. His salary when he left the company, when he died, my dad's salary, and that was $1,000 a month. That's what he was being paid, and he just and he lived just fine on $1,000 a month. Because that just was never a part of what he did. But that was a really important thing to listen to him talk about it in that way. And so you see the kids, and you see that some of them are, got 3 kids now themselves and doing what they're doing and following them. And that's a really great part of what life's all about. Is sharing life with. And being able to share it with people that you work with is a pretty neat deal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, pretty neat deal. All right, guys.
I love it.
Absolutely.
I'd like to show you 2 pictures in here if I can find them, because it really. There's my car. 2005.
Oh, the 55 here.
Yep. So I bought that because I just had an 8-hour surgery. And they said I was successful. I said, if I live through it, I'm going to go buy a car.
Yeah, there you go.
So we went to Germany. Oh, here I'm in my boat.
On Lake Chelan.
Lake Chelan.
That wasn't that long ago, 06?
Yeah, that was not long ago. But 2 pictures that show that are really extreme pictures. See if I can find it. I noticed them the other day. Yeah, maybe I'm not going to find them. Yeah, see here I'm jumping out of an airplane.
Yeah.
Just have to do that stuff. My son is crazy about it, but he was even down at Nevada a couple weeks ago when they had all that rainstorm, and they were told they couldn't leave. And you heard there were certain people that did leave.
Yeah.
He and 5 other guys who you've read about in the paper
Yeah.
snuck off. And at 12 o'clock at night, they left and clogged for 6 hours through 6 and 12 inches of snow.
Wow.
Or mud. Yeah, and they were the first ones to get out. Let's see, they got to be able to find these, because it really sums up things in words.
Sure.
There's our first date. You can believe that?
Those are great.
Yeah, they're great pictures.
Is this something that I can order a copy of?
No,
Not publicly available.
not publicly available.
Published.
Darn it. Where are those? Oh, here's one of them. Yeah, here's 2. They were right at the very beginning. All right, when I was dating Marcia, and I was always, as you can see, 165 pounds, 5'8". And I was,
That's a muscle like we talked about.
yeah, okay. Now, what does cancer do to you?
Wow.
That's what it's done to me.
Mm.
This month is my favorite month, so I told my wife one time, she said, what are you going to dress up for Halloween? I said, it's really easy this year. I'm going to take my clothes off and go as a skeleton.
Skeleton.
I mean, look at that. That's,
Wow.
there's my water ski, which I did 2 years ago,
Wow.
2021. I was doing that same thing. I didn't do it this year. Yeah. Yeah, it's all a fun bunch of stuff.
It's a journey.
Here's me in high school. I was a kind of a tough
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Is
Number
that a
7.
football or basketball?
This was our basketball team.
Basketball team.
There's one of the. I played 8 years of football, and that was part of our team. I don't think of any high school pictures there. But